since Dylan's already set the context, we'll jump right into the demo. So what we'll see right now is, in case you're already familiar with the survey programming product, what we try to build are copilot tools where you continue to do the same work that you do today, but AI will help you assist at different parts of the workflow so that you're able to do your job much more quicker, right? And it's basically helping you do that by automating a lot of the mundane decisions that you're taking, by applying AI in taking those smaller decisions so that you're able to spend your time taking the more cognitively effortful decisions within your workflow. Right? How that reflects in data processing specifically is three parts of the workflow that we automate today. Uh, we'll go one by one as I share my screen and walk you through the demo. So we'll look at what are the three parts of the workflow that you already follow where AI is helping you automate. You should be able to see my screen. We'll do a quick project together in this demo itself where I walk you through those three steps. But even before I get started, uh, I'll just walk you through a few things that you do even before you create a project in setting up your account, and that sort of helps set the context for what happens during this demo, right? So even before creating the project, what you do is, one, you bring in all the macros that you might have created for yourself, both for validation as well as tabulation, right? So you basically just paste the code that you previously written for these two tasks, depending on what tool you use today, whether it's SPSS, Quantum, and so on. The second thing that you do is you define the validation checks that your organization prefers to perform based on different conditions, right? So you might do, of course, there are some basic checks that you always do. So there is base check and filtered base check, all of these things that you do regardless of what question type it is. And then there are some question type specific cases that you might want to implement as validations. And there might also be things that are agnostic of the question type itself. So whether if there are termination programming notes given in the questionnaire, you have to understand the context of the questionnaire, you have to understand the logical flow, and then based on that, you have to implement those checks. So things like that are also included here, right? So out of these out of the box checks that we already do, so these are already present when you get your account first. On top of that, if there are any custom checks that your organization does, that you can define them as well, right? And finally, if you have any syntax preferences, so we've seen that very large organizations like Dyneta and many others, they might have very specific preference of how you need to write code and what functions you are supposed to use and so on, right? This is largely coming from preferences like some functions might be slower to run than others. So if you want to bring down your execution time for SPSS, for example, you might want to, instead of using select, you might want to use something else and so on, right? So if you have any syntax preference, then you can define them here as well. So these are all done at the account level when you first get onboarded into the tool. So this makes sure that anything else that you do within Metaforms is very contextual to how you already write code and so on, right? So that's just quick context. So now we'll jump right into creating a project. So the workflow starts with very typically how you start a project as well, right? So the survey programmer has scripted the survey. You have the SAV file, the variable definition file from the SP, and you also have the questionnaire, right? So this is the point where the tool also starts becoming useful to you, and that's when you enter the tool. So what you do is first you upload these two documents that you might have gotten from your SP, right? So the first thing I'll do is I'll upload one of the SAV files that I have, I received from the SP. I'll name this project, and I'll also upload the questionnaire file that I have for the same project. So once the workflow starts, the first thing that's going to happen within Metaforms and what AI is going to help you do is, even before we write validations, it's going to help you review all the variable definitions as you received from the SP, right? So we've seen that some organizations enforce this as a mandatory step for their DP team. So every project that DP is supposed to review all the variables, make sure that the labels and the values are all correct. Some organizations might not do it today because it's very effortful and you'll have to spend many hours just to review variables. But if you are able to automate this and review just the ones which are likely to have errors, then you might also start doing it. And regardless of whether you've already done it, you probably have an intuition for how important the step this is. We've seen a lot of projects where if you miss mistakes made at this step, it becomes more difficult to catch those errors later on when you're writing validation script or when you're doing tabulations. At that point, if you find these errors, it might be more effortful, as well as you would have wasted some responses that you've gotten during that time. Right? So here, what is happening is instead of you having to manually review all the variables, AI is reviewing the variables for you, comparing that to the questionnaire that we just uploaded, right? So it's first understanding the context of the questionnaire and understanding what are all the different questions and values defined in the questionnaire, regardless of the format of the questionnaire itself. So it can be exactly what you got from your client. You don't have to format it. But once you upload the questionnaire, it's looking at that and it's figuring out what are the mistakes that are likely there in the variables, right? So most of these variables are already correct, so I don't even have to review it thoroughly. I can just glance through. But if I keep scrolling, I'll find some variables which AI has reviewed and has marked it as potentially containing some errors, right? So if you look at Q2A, we'll quickly scroll to that and see. Uh, you will see that there here I think it is because the question label is not exactly matching what is there in the questionnaire. So any reason like that where either the question label is not matching, the data type is not matching, or the values given here are not exactly matching, all of these become reason for AI to flag it so that you're able to then more carefully review it and then make sure that it's correct or not. And regardless of whether AI is reviewing, flagging this or not, the workflow for you to follow here is you accept or reject. You basically give it a thumbs down or thumbs, depending on whether it looks correct or not. So that finally you're able to export a report and then send it back to your survey programmer saying, hey, these variables are not defined correctly. Please look into it and correct the script and get back, right? And of course, if you want to add specific comments, you can type messages for your SP team and then share the report with it. The other reason why reviewing variables take a lot of time is maybe the questionnaire itself is quite simple, but it might have a lot of loops and structures like that, because of which the number of variables is still high, right? So here again, what AI is going to do is it's going to group variable questions together. So here, for example, all these variables belong to the same question definition, just that it happens to be a part of a loop. So here, if I reject it, for example, because I want the SP team to review it, what happens here is AI is saying, hey, just like this particular question that you selected, there are other questions as well. There are other variables as well that belongs to the same loop. Would you like to perform the same action on them as well? So just in a single click, I can review all those variables instead of doing one at a time. So again, the overall time it takes for me to review becomes much more lower. And this graph represents that sort of time saving overall, right? So we started with 140 variables. Uh, Within that, first AI was able to classify that 22 are programming variables. So these are calculation related variables that I don't really have to review myself. So I can completely ignore that. And the remaining 118 variables, it was able to classify that only 21 actually needs review because there is something that is potentially wrong with the variable definition, but the remaining 97 already looks correct based on the questionnaire. So I can just briefly go through it, but I don't have to review it as such. So overall, instead of spending around half an hour to review these 140 variables, I can just spend 5 minutes to review the ones that actually needs reviewing. So that's the first step of the workflow that AI helps you make faster. So either you don't already do this, in which case now suddenly you're able to do this because the time it takes is just 5 minutes. So you can consider doing this and you're able to catch these errors early on, or you already do this as a first step, in which case you're today spending many hours. And now instead of spending multiple hours, you can just spend 5 to 10 minutes to review variables. So that's the first step. I'll keep moving on to the next step uh, by clicking on continue. So here, what you'll see happen is the second step, which is helping you write validation script, right? So what that means is, based on the context of the questionnaire, so we know that there are some checks that you can implement just by knowing the question type. So if you know that it's a single punch question, you can apply a macro, or you can say quickly implement some checks that you do out of the box, very standard checks. You might do range check, blank check, and so on. But there are also checks for which you first need to read the questionnaire and you need to understand the context. And usually that is where it takes more time to implement, to write the validation script initially when you have the questionnaire, right? So here what is going to happen is, when I ask AI to generate validation script, so there's a shortcut control K, based on which it'll open this pop-up. I can give it a specific instruction, or I can just ask it to generate the validation script. So here what's going to happen is it's going to look at the questionnaire and understand the logical flow and the condition flow. So it's reading the programming notes which are given in addition to the question itself. And based on that understanding, it's going to implement the validation script. And you can see that sort of stream on the left, uh, one question at a time, right? So if you just go through some of these to see what validation it has implemented. So some of these might be very simple questions. So it knows that it's a single punch question. So it did a range check uh, and missing value check here. So a lot of these are quite simple. Uh, uh, but if I keep going, so some of these might be more complicated, right? Uh, I think if you look at more based questions, based on the context of the questionnaire, it realized that these are all part of the same loop. So this particular question has to be shown based on all the options selected in question one. So because this is given in the question instruction as a programming note here, it was able to figure that out, and it's able to create vectors for all the loop iterations, and it's able to implement checks for all of those within a loop, right? So that seems to be right. And similarly, uh, in question three, again, I think there is others option which needs to be validated. This is again part of the same loop. So it was able to understand that these are all the questions that are part of the loop, and it's implementing the same check here as well, and so on and so forth, right? So because it's able to read the questionnaire, you'll see that compared to the older automations that you would have seen, which is purely based on the variable definition file, where you might have already created some scripts which look at the SAV file, and it writes the scripts that need to be written. Here it is also looking at the programming notes, because of which a lot of the time that you typically spend reading the questionnaire has been saved. And instead of doing that, you can just review the code that AI is writing, which takes much lesser time. This is today supported for a few of these tools that you might already be using: SPSS, Python, Dimensions, and Quantum. So depending on what tool you select here, we'll generate the syntax for that. Uh, but once you use Metaforms to generate this code, now you can take this code anywhere outside and execute it. So if you already have a local PC license, you can copy this code and bring it there to run it. Or if you have a cloud-based environment to run this, you can take there as well. So that's the validation piece. The next thing that we do is also helping you write tabulation scripts based on the tab spec file that you might have received from the client, right? So during this process, we uploaded the questionnaire and the variable definition file. But what happens is, if I also upload the analysis plan or the tab spec file that I've received from the client, now suddenly AI also can read the tab spec file regardless of the format of the file itself. So just like the questionnaire did not have to be formatted specifically for Metaforms, the tab spec file also can be in any format. It can have any terminology that the client follows, but you can simply upload that file as it is, and then ask AI to generate the tab spec tabulation script, which will then look at the specification for each table which has to be generated. It'll look at instructions for things like weighting and so on, and then it'll implement the SPSS code or whichever tool that you selected here to generate the code which will generate those tables. So here, for example, I selected SPSS to do this, but similarly, I can also select dimensions, quantum, and so on to generate the table script to generate the tables here as well. So that's a quick look at the overall workflow and where Metaforms comes in when you follow your typical workflow. In addition to this, of course, change management is a critical part, uh, either before the survey has gone live or after the survey goes live. You might have multiple tracker versions and so on, based on which you might need to update your validation script, right? So here, what Metaforms does for you is initially you while configuring the account, you would let us know how you track versions for your responses. So most companies uh, define a hidden variable where you punch the first version, you would punch as 1, and then next release that you do, you might punch it as 2, and you keep incrementing. So when you do that, what AI is going to do is you can upload a newer version of the questionnaire whenever you get that from the client, and you need to update the validation script for. So once you upload that, we will look at we will update the validation script such that it will conditionally add the additional validation that needs to be implemented, right? So it might go something like if version number equals 2, then also perform these additional questions because we've used because in the second version there are some additional questions implemented and so on, right? So it could be any of these changes. It could be question being added or removed. It can be options being added or removed or updated, labels changing. All of these changes that you typically see while going through different versions of the questionnaire, or if it's a tracker study. But regardless of what change it is, we'll update the validation code that you initially written to also accommodate for the changes that you made to the second version. So the validation code now becomes valid both for the first version as well as the second and remaining versions as well. So that's a quick look at the overall workflow and what Metaforms does for you. We'll also quickly look at the coverage of what tools that we support today. Jatin, if you can bring that slide up. Yeah. So for validation today, we started with SPSS, Python, Dimension, and Quantum. We are specifically seeing that a lot of larger clients are moving towards Python because there is more efficiency gain there in terms of execution time and so on. So these are the 4 languages we support today with validation. And similarly for tabulation, we are starting with SPSS, Dimensions, and Quantum. Next up, we are also targeting WinCross and other tools as well. So that's a quick look at what we generally do. Jatin, if you want to close the conversation.
Yeah. Hi, Jatin, and hi, Arjun. This is Rajat from Sumanda. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Actually, the thing is, like, we guys are working, the tabulation scripts in Merlin. Merlin is also a UK-based tool, basically, which is, being working as a data tabulation part. So, like, in future, if you guys work on that, that will be great for us.
Sorry, which tool is this?
This is Merlin.
Merlin. Okay, got it. Got it. Makes sense. We'll look at this in the roadmap for sure. I think we've also heard Q research software and
Yeah,
few
Q is
others.
also software which is being using.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, makes sense. So I think those are more GUI related. I haven't seen Merlin specifically, but a few of these are more GUI related. So we are also building a separate version which works better with GUI based tools, because today all of these are code based. But definitely makes sense. We'll take that into account for the roadmap.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Before we close this, any other comments, any questions, anything that we can help you with today? Awesome. If nothing, I think we can close it. We'll host subsequent demos like this when we keep building newer versions and so on. So we'll keep you updated on what we are shipping, what are the new features, and how we are thinking about how AI can help with data processing. So we'll keep you posted when there are newer events. Jatin, anything else you want to add?
Awesome. So for everyone who's joined, I would highly recommend that you also head over to community.metaforms.ai. Like Arjun said, this is one of our first demos we have hosted of this kind. As we keep building the product, expect a few more or multiple of these in the future. We're also inviting a lot of demos for the current data processing tool. So feel free to reach out to our team. We're super responsive, and we'll be happy to talk one-on-one and host or at least arrange one-on-one demos. Aside from that, thank you so much for your time today. It was lovely demonstrating the tool to the first few people who joined. And the
Yeah,
rest
Jatin, Rajat this side again. Can I ask one question?
Sure.
Yeah, you guys have shown that like it's going red flag when we are uploading the spaces into the the server or the portal. But in the space limitation, we have 200 characters. If let's suppose and the limitation is crossing 200 characters, it will always flag the variables which is crossing the 200 limits. So is there any way that if we can upload the Excel for just for only checking the labels or the variable values? Because if let's suppose in the questionnaire text is crossing more than 200 text, it will always flag, the space will come as a truncated text. And when we upload it, it will always give the red flag for the variable values.
Hey, Rajat. So this is something that we've already accounted for. We've seen that SPSS truncates the label. So when we do the validation of labels, we already check only till that character, not beyond it. So those wouldn't be flagged usually.
Okay, that wouldn't be flag. Perfect. Great.
Awesome.
Awesome. I hope that answers your question, Rajat. If in case you have others, feel free to, we'd be happy to answer them as well.
Yeah, perfect. That's a great session. I must say that it's a very, innovative tool, and we guys are also working on that, and we'll definitely, disturb you as soon as possible for many things.
Sure, we'd love to be disturbed again.
Thank you, buddies. Thank you.
Awesome. That has been all. This was the showcase for our data processing tool. Thank you so much for your time today.